Welcome, everybody. I'm delighted to be doing this session together with you. As you can see, I'm sitting against a black background. I'm going to be giving a quick introduction to the core concepts of donut economics. And I decided, rather than show slides again, I wanted to do it in a more playful festival style way. So I'm going to do it visually. So I'm going to give a quick overview of 7 ways to think like a 21st century economist. Here we go. First of all, the first thing you do not need is one of these, because 21st century economics does not, I think, start with calculations, equations, and maths. That's not where we begin. We begin with our eyes, the way we see the world, the images and the models that we put in front of ourselves that deeply influence what we see and what we don't see, what we put at the center of our vision, what we leave at the periphery, or what we leave off the screen altogether. So I'm going to tell you the story of 7 ways to think in images. The first way to think like a 21st century economist is to change the goal, to let go of the 20th century goal of the shape of progress being endless growth, this exponential curve shape going, not just stopping up in the air, but going up, up, up through the ceiling endlessly, because that's what exponentials do. The 20th century concept was that we could measure economic success with GDP, gross national product. And this would be a good enough sign of an economy success. No matter how rich an economy already is, the idea that its success lies in yet more growth, and you hear this in the speeches of politicians and the advice of economists, that the solution to our problems, even if we are sitting in the richest countries in the world, the solutions to our problems lies in yet more growth. There's something insane and ultimately impossible about that. So let's leave behind the pursuit of endless growth and replace it with thriving in balance. For this, a donut-shaped compass can accompany us, right? And the goal here is very simple. Leave no one in the hole, falling short on the essentials of life, but don't overshoot the limits of our life-supporting systems of our planetary home. So we need to thrive between the social foundation and the ecological ceiling. And this notion of thriving in balance, not endless growth, but thriving, of course, goes back in indigenous cultures a long way. It is at the heart of an indigenous worldview, living in balance with the rest of the living world. And in each one of us knows it in our own bodies. Health lies in balance in the human body. Can we take that to an understanding of health lying in balance in the planetary body, so that we have a donut-shaped picture that says, leave no one in the hole, falling short on these essentials of life, and these 12 dimensions of the social foundation: health, education, housing, food, income, peace, voice, equity. They come from the Sustainable Development Goals, which means all the governments in the world have already agreed that every person in the world has a right not to be left in this hole. So leave no one in the hole. But as we seek to meet our needs and our wants, we risk collectively overshooting these 9 planetary boundaries that give us the unique stability of life on this planet, a stable climate, fertile soils, abundant biodiversity, recharging fresh water, a protective ozone layer overhead. We'd be crazy to kick ourselves out of this thriving space of balance. But of course, that is exactly what we are doing. So how do we turn our story around and start to come back within planetary boundaries while meeting the needs of all people at the same time? If you were teaching economics and wanting to turn that story around, what would be the first and biggest picture of the economy that you would teach? Well, the 20th century picture. And here we need the second way of thinking to see the big picture, because in the 20th century, the biggest picture of the economy that was taught focused on the circulation of money, the flow of money going round and round in the economy, and then goods and resources in exchange. Very clever diagram, quite useful for a war economy, but deeply flawed, because it ultimately presents the economy as if it's a piece of perpetual piping, plumbing that goes around and around. This is impossible. Because what does it take to make resources go round and around? It takes energy. We need to put the recognition of the power of energy and life at the heart of our economies. No economy is a self-perpetuating machine. We need to think again. And so a new diagram for the biggest picture of the economy is called the embedded economy diagram. And we start like this, recognizing that the economy is a subset of society. It is a social construct. We invented it and we can reinvent it. And it's embedded in social systems like political, legal, and cultural institutions. And human society is embedded in the rest of the living world. We are a part of nature and deeply dependent upon the web of life. We are bathed in a river of solar energy. There's the second law of thermodynamics. Welcome to entropy. We draw in material and matter into the economy. We put out waste and pollution. And therefore, the first requirement of an economy that belongs on this planet is that it works with and within the cycles of the living world. It respects the conditions that create conditions conducive to life. But then let's look inside the economy and recognize, okay, there's the market where most economics begins, and there's the state. And the 20th century economic debate got caught in an ideological boxing match between these two. Are you a free market, laissez-faire capitalist, or are you a state-loving socialist? And you've got to choose. In that ideological boxing match, economists lost sight of two other fundamental ways that we provision for our needs and wants. The household, where we all begin every day with our families, as parents, as children, as partners, as carers, doing the cooking, washing, the cleaning, the sweeping, raising the next generation of kids, getting labor fresh and ready for work every day to go to work in the market or the state, all underpinned by unpaid caring work in the household. But also the commons, where we come together, not through the market or the state, but as a community, collaborating, co-creating services and goods that we value, often with no money changing hands. So these four fundamental ways that we provision for our needs and wants, each bring unique contributions, but no one of them should overwhelm or crowd out space for the rest. And then looking right inside, in the center, we have here financial flows. Just imagine if finance actually was a service, financial services in service to the provisioning through these four means, in service to life, human well-being, and the thriving of the whole planet. That would be a very, very different financial system from the one we have today. So a big picture that always recognizes the economy in context and recognizes our many means of provisioning. These provide us big clues to how we can reinvent our economies. Third way to think, who are we? Humanity. How do we see ourselves in the economic story? Well, let's go back to Adam Smith and John Stuart Mill and up to Milton Friedman. Economists over the centuries have created images of humanity, a model of man at the heart of economic theory, who's ended up being called rational economic man. He's always described in equations, in a set of attributes, but I think he deserves a portrait of his own. So here he is. Rational economic man, he would be a man with no dependence. He stands alone with money in his hand. That's the way he interacts with the world. He's got ego in his heart, self-interest. He's got a calculator in his head and nature at his feet. He hates work. He loves luxury and he knows the price of everything. And the real problem with this character is not just how absurdly narrow he is. It's what looking at him does to us, because you see, the more that we are told that he is like us, we actually become like him. Studies have shown that economic students from year 1 to year 2 to year 3, they more say they value self-interest over altruism. They more value competition over collaboration. So who we tell ourselves we are shapes who we become. We need a far richer portrait of humanity, of ourselves, if we're to thrive, 8 billion of us here together on this planet. And so instead, well, the model I need is simply us here, community, in relation, the multitude of people and our relatedness. We are the most social of all mammals. We have an ability to share, cooperate, queue, gift, empathize, care, far beyond our next of kin, to cooperate and collaborate with those we've never met, just as we're doing in making this day happen. So we need to nurture the best of human nature and put that full pro-social richness of our character at the heart of our economic systems. The fourth way to think like a 21st century economist, number 4, how do we think the economy actually works? Now, if we adopt the 20th century models and think of the economy in a rather mechanistic way, controlled, piping, enclosed, then we might come at it a bit like a mechanic, trying to make mechanical interventions to change the flow of things. This ain't going to work, because the economy is not controlled and utterly predictable and does not work in a mechanistic way. The economy is a complex, adaptive system, and we can't control that. It's got feedback loops and tipping points and unpredictable behavior that you don't know is going to happen. But what we can do is seek to understand it and seek to be good stewards of this system. Can we steward it and try to shape its dynamics so that they serve our goals? So if we can be stewards, more like gardeners than mechanics, what direction would we want to steward the economy in? And the 5th way is to create the economy to be distributive by design, because we have inherited economies that are divisive by design. They capture value and opportunity in the hands of a few. Did you know that over the last decade, the number of billionaires in the world has more than doubled, from 1,000 billionaires to 2,000 billionaires? And the richest 1% of the people in the world own half of the world's wealth. There's absolutely no way that humanity can live and thrive in the donut in such an extraordinarily unequal world within and between nations. So we need to take this deeply divisive economy, divisive because of privilege, inheritance, regulation, power. We need to turn that divisive economy into one that is far more distributive by design, so that we share value and opportunity that's created with all who co-create it. And that turns out to be the whole of society. We can create far, far more distributive economies, because inequality is not a law of economics. It's a design choice, a design fault, and we can overcome it. As well as changing from divisive to distributive, the 6th way to think like a 21st century economist recognizes that we've inherited deeply degenerative economies. We take Earth's materials, we stick them in the pipe of production, we transform it into stuff, we use it often only once, and then we just throw it away out the end of the pipe. And this linear degenerative system is running down the living world. It is pushing us over planetary boundaries. We need to turn that linear degenerative global economy that we've created into a regenerative, cyclical, circular one, so that resources aren't used up, they're used again and again, far more carefully, more collectively, more creatively, and more slowly. And of course, this way of living, a return to the cycles of the earth, lies at the heart of indigenous culture and community and lifestyle forever. Can we relearn it and return to? So from divisive to distributive, from degenerative to regenerative, if we're going to change the deep dynamics of our economies, we need to change the design of our institutions too. And this comes from the thinker Marjorie Kelly. So whether you're talking about an enterprise or a government or an NGO or a foundation or a university or a club, any organization, think about 5 deep design traits. What is the purpose of this organization? Why does it even exist in the world? What are its networks of relationship with your employees or staff or your members, your customers, your suppliers, all the relations you hold? How do you live out your values in those relations? Are they extractive or collaborative? How is this organization governed? Who's in the room when decisions get made? Who actually has voice in those decisions? Does nature have a voice? Do future generations have a voice? Do all those affected have a voice? What are the metrics of success? How is this organization owned? Who owns the critical sources of wealth that it stewards? And ultimately, how it's owned is going to have a big say over how it's financed. Where does the finance behind this organization come from? And therefore, what is that finance expecting? What is it extracting? And what is it reinvesting in your purpose? So behind the desire to transform the dynamics of our economies lies the deep design of organizations. And we need to transform the design of our organizations if we are going to transform the dynamics that they can actually bring about in the world. So to get into the donut, we want to become regenerative and distributive. This takes us back to the seventh and final way to think like a 21st century economist, takes us back to that old story of growth, because 20th century economists have left us flying off into the sunset of mass consumerism, pursuing endless growth. Indeed, not just pursuing it, addicted to it. Our economies have become structurally dependent, politically, financially, and socially, on endless growth. And let's recognize that growth is a wonderful, healthy phase of life. That's why we love to see our kids grow. We love to see our gardens grow. But nothing in nature succeeds by trying to grow forever. It will destroy itself or the system on which it depends. And in our own bodies, we call that cancer. Things that survive and thrive and endure in nature don't try to grow forever. They go through the growth phase, and with a flick of a wrist, they grow up, they mature, and that is what enables them to survive and thrive. So can we bring this shape into our economies? Can we create economies that grow and then grow up and mature and thrive? Can we remove the structural dependency on endless growth that is currently written into our economies? And this is an immediate challenge, especially for the world's richest and most resource-using countries. That's the existential 21st century question about growth. So there is a whirlwind overview of 7 ways to think like a 21st century economist. And when I wrote Donut Economics, I said, there will be more ways. There will be an 8th, 9th, 10th way. And I think the 8th way has revealed itself already. I think the 8th way to think like a 21st century economist is to try to put it into practice, because we will learn the most through trying things out and seeing what happens. I actually profoundly believe that 21st century economics is going to be practiced first and theorized later, which is why we co-founded Deal, to put these ideas into action and ask what happens, what has traction, what takes off, what gets resistance, what works, how will things be designed and owned, how will things be distributed between the market, the state, the household, and the commons? How can we redesign economies to be in service to life? So with that overview, I want to hand over to you to dive into this 8th way. What have you been learning as you attempting to put these ideas into practice, whether it's in the classroom or in your community, in a business, in your city, in your neighborhood? What are you learning in the process of what it means to actually bring these ideas into practice? We're going to invite you to share back your learning with each other so that we can all learn this together.